Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of April. I managed to read 14 books, which I am so pleased with, considering there was an entire week this month where I was traveling, so I wasn't able to finish any books. So 14 I am really pleased with. As far as page count goes, I read 4,404 pages. So we got a lot of fours in there, and it's the 4th month of the year. Okay, I love it. As far as ratings go, I had 0 1-star, 4 2-star, 2 3-star, 2 4-star, and 6 5-star books. I feel like I had a great reading month, but my average rating was 3.71, which isn't horrible, but I felt like it should have been higher, but I guess I did have quite a few 2-stars. So let's get on into the books that I completed in the month of April. As always, we will start in the order that I read them in. So the first 3 books I read in April, I read for my extreme horror reading blog, so I will leave that link down below and you can see all of my real-time thoughts and exactly my thought process for each of these books. But the first book I completed was The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. Now this is said to be like the OG extreme horror book, so I felt like it should be my first book reading extreme horror. And this book definitely is extreme. So for all of these books, definitely check trigger warnings. So in this book, we follow a young boy named David. David lives next door to this family who has a lot of sons, and recently they have 2 girls come move with them who are their cousins because something tragic happened to these girls and they have nowhere to live, so they move in with this family next door. Over the course of this book, we start to see the mom of this household kind of start to slowly lose her mind and lose her temper, especially when it comes towards these girls. Throughout the course of the novel, the treatment of these girls is getting worse and worse, and the oldest actually gets locked into the basement where horrible, unspeakable things happen to her. That's as far as I'm going to go into the synopsis, and definitely I will say this was shocking, and I feel like this book was written for shock value alone, and I didn't really get anything out of it, which when it comes to extreme horror, you don't get a whole lot out of it in general. It is for shock value, but this book also had some things that made me kind of angry in the way that one character in particular got a redemption arc that should not have had a redemption arc at all. I felt like that storyline kind of messed up the entire story because the things that these characters did could not be forgiven, and so the fact that the author tried to make us feel like we should forgive certain characters was just unacceptable, and I did not really like that. I buddy read this book with Michelle from Michelle's Library, and I really had a great time buddy reading this book because I was able to talk through all of my feelings with her, but ultimately I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. The next extreme horror book I read was Night of the Prowler by John Athan, and this one went so much better than The Girl Next Door. So basically this novel is a slasher book, and I have discovered that I really love slasher books. So this one in particular, we follow a girl named Zoe, and a person has escaped and they are going and they are slashing, they are killing, and it is extreme, it is gruesome, it is gory, and I had such a great time on this ride. I love the fact that we follow this girl named Zoe, and she was working in a gas station overnight, and that setting is really creepy to me. I feel like gas station settings are so much fun for me to read, and I really like it. I just love the slashing, like life or death kind of plot that was in this because the stakes felt so high. My heart was racing and I was really rooting for Zoe throughout the book. I definitely recommend this one if you are okay with reading extreme horror, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read For the Sake Of by Judith Sonnet, and we follow a mother named Tabby, and a few months ago her child was kidnapped and now is missing, and Tabby just really wants to see her daughter again. One day, Tabby receives a brown paper sack on her porch, and in the bag is a cell phone and a picture of a Polaroid with her daughter holding a severed head. So when she gets a call, when the phone rings, there are several tasks she has to complete in order to complete the game and get her child back. So I really enjoyed the whole game aspect in this. There are 4 different tasks that Tabby has to complete, and they are horrible, despicable. Let me just say, if I was ever in this situation, could not be me. I would not do any of these things for any of my loved ones. Sorry, you already know I would not do this, and I would not expect anyone to do this for me as well. So the things that Tabby did, sickening, gruesome, disgusting, and once again, I had a great time reading this and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Be wary going into any of these books though. I'm not recommending them to you. I'm just saying I had a good time. Next, I picked up Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne. So this is kind of a historical retelling of Frankenstein. We follow Victor Frankenstein's sister, Angelica, and Angelica just really wants to find love. So what does she do? She quite literally makes her match. She goes to the morgue, picks out all of the perfect parts, and kind of Frankensteins him together and brings this man back to life. And when this man comes back to life, he has no memory or recollection of who he was in his previous life. So over the course of this book, they are trying to figure out who he was because he really wants to know. This book was a major disappointment for me. I really didn't care about any of the characters at all. There was absolutely no chemistry between the two love interests in this book, so I really didn't care about the romance, and the steamy scenes were some of the worst I've read, which is so shocking to me because I love Sally Thorne's romance books, and so I know what she can write and I know what she can do, and this was just not it for me. It was boring, didn't care about anything, and I gave it 2 stars. The next book I read was one of the books I read for my new releases horror vlog, so I will leave that link down below, and that is She Is a Haunting, which, stunning. I have to bring up this cover every time. But this book is actually set in Vietnam, and we follow a girl who is graduating high school and is about to go to college, but she can't afford to go, so she needs money. So she gets in contact with her estranged father, who he left years ago, and they haven't really seen or spoken since, and they don't have a good relationship. But he makes this pact with her that if she comes and lives with him for the summer, that he will help her pay for college. Now, her father is kind of renovating and sprucing up this French Victorian house in Vietnam, and so they are staying in this house. But the girl, when she gets there, she feels like this house might be haunted, but her dad does not believe her, so she, with one of her friends, kind of pulls these pranks throughout the summer to show that this house is haunted, and hopefully the dad will believe her so they can get out. I did not understand this book. I just feel like when I was finished, I was like, I have no idea what happened. I did not care for any of the characters or the romance in here. I was so bored, and I was dragging my feet through this, and the scenes just felt so incohesive. Is that a word? I don't know. They just didn't go together. I felt like we were jumping from scene to scene, and I had really no way to follow it. I didn't know what was going on, so I gave it 2 stars. After back-to-back disappointments, I picked up a book I knew I would love because that is a reread, and it is The Cruelest Mercy by Natalie May. This is book 2 in the Kind of Poison trilogy, and it is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. So in this world, we follow Zaru, and Zaru has the magical ability of a whisperer, which means she can talk to animals. So in this world, there is like a hierarchy of magical powers, and the type of power you have kind of elevates your status in society. And unfortunately for Zaru, a whisperer is like bottom of the barrel, lowest rung on the ladder. They are very poor. So the crossing is about to happen, and in this world, the crossing is when the heirs come together and they have to complete a competition to figure out who is going to be the next Mestra, the next king, the next god of the kingdom. So Zaru really wants to go spend one night in the palace and see this magical, beautiful world and experience the luxury for one night. When she sneaks into the palace, she accidentally becomes the human sacrifice for the crossing, and she has to figure out how to survive and find a way out of the situation she's found herself in. This is the second book, so it obviously follows the events of the first book and the crossing and everything that happens there. I love these characters so much. I just connect with them so personally and so deeply, and it was interesting because this is my second time reading this book, and I have found myself shipping a completely different ship. Like, normally when an author switches things up on you, I'm like, no, I want the first ship that I originally signed on for. But in this one, I found myself rooting for another character, and I just had a great time falling in love with somebody else. So I gave this one 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Please read the series. Next, I read All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham, and in this book we follow a mother named Isabel Drake, and a few months ago her son Mason was kidnapped and taken, and there has been no sign of him since. So since then she has started going to these true crime conventions trying to get his story out there, and she actually meets a podcaster at one of these conventions, and she agrees to go on his podcast so she can hopefully figure out what happened to Mason. I loved this book. Stacey Willingham did it again. She's the author of A Flicker in the Dark, which is a book that I really loved last year, and this one, I just loved it so much too. Initially, I wasn't enjoying it as much. I was like, okay, this is giving me 4-star vibes, but the ending, oh my goodness, Stacey Willingham really knows how to suck you in and take you for a wild ride. The ending just put it all together for me so well. The way it was written, the things that all came together, I just absolutely loved it and had a great time reading it. These are those types of thrillers that you love in the moment, but over time you kind of start to forget what happened. But I feel like when I reread these will be a great reread. But I still give this one 5 stars because that ending really had me going. Next, I read Finley Donovan Jumps the Gun by El Cosimano. This is the 3rd book in the Finley Donovan series. So if you haven't heard by now, this is a widely popular series where we follow a struggling mother named Finley Donovan, and in the 1st book, she accidentally gets mistaken for a hit woman and gets hired to kill this woman's husband, and shenanigans ensue. This is kind of a cozy mystery series, and I have a great time reading it. The 1st book was by far my favorite of the 3 so far, but I still love the series and following these characters. This 3rd book in particular, it takes place at a civilian police academy where these civilians can sign up and go through a different training to kind of see what it's like to go through a police academy. And I just really love Finley and Vero and their relationship and their friendship that is formed. It's a really great time. This one was a bit lackluster for me because the setting and the plot just wasn't my favorite. I felt like this one was also a little slower, but I still had fun reading it and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next was another reread for me, and that is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This is book 1 in the Lunar Chronicles, and this is my favorite series of all time. I love this series so much. I've read it, I can't even remember how many times, but this one in particular follows a cyborg named Cinder, and this is a fairy tale retelling. So each book follows a different retelling. So this one in particular is Cinderella, and she is living in the Commonwealth, and she meets Prince Kai, and I just love it so much. It is like a sci-fi retelling. I love these characters. I cannot tell you how much I feel for them. I just feel connected to them in such a deep way that I don't for so many other books, but these books in particular, the characters, they just get me going. The stories, I really love it so much, and it'll always just be my favorite, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was The Mist by Stephen King. This is one of his novellas, and this was my Stephen King of the month in publication order that I'm reading them. And in this book, there is a mist that is blowing through town after a big storm happened, and we follow this father and his son as they get stuck in a grocery store because this mist is rolling through town, and people are slowly discovering that there are things in the mist that are killing everybody. So this one was actually my least favorite Stephen King story so far, which I was very shocked by. I felt like I would love it because it is such an iconic thing to have some unknown thing coming and killing people. I am such a sucker for those stories, but this one was just kind of boring to me, didn't really care about any of the characters, and I just found myself kind of bored while reading it, and that's really all I have to say about this one. I still gave it 3 stars because it was entertaining having that unknown thing, but overall just not my favorite. The next book I read was The Sweetest Betrayal by Natalie May. This is the 3rd and final book in the Kinder Poison trilogy. I just talked about the sequel, so I don't need to go into what the series is about, but the conclusion of this was so sweet and also kind of bitter because it's over, so bittersweet, you know how the saying goes. But I had so much fun. Once again, these characters just mean so much to me. I tabbed and annotated this one up, and I discovered when I finished it, I had no idea, but I am in the acknowledgement. There's my name right there. So that is so special to me because this is my favorite fantasy series and one of my top favorite series of all time. I've never seen anyone else on BookTube read it, so please, if you pick up one thing from this video, this series, please pick it up. The next 2 books are books I also read for that new release horror video, and the first one I want to talk about is Where Darkness Blooms by Andrea Hanna. So in this book, we follow 4 teenage girls who all live in the same house together, and they also lived there with their mothers until 2 years ago, their mothers randomly disappeared from their small town. The small town that they live in is called Bishop, and it is in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, and it is surrounded by giant sunflower fields. So their mothers going missing isn't that unusual because in Bishop, women tend to go missing or be found dead randomly, and no one really questions it. These 4 girls are also dealing with major dark secrets of their own, and so they are struggling with their secrets coming out possibly and trying to figure out what happened to their mothers. The thing is with this town, the land thirsts for blood and the sunflowers whisper secrets. So this book has the perfect amount of horror and magical realism sprinkled in there that just worked so well together. The mystery of this town and the secrets that you find out about the girls as you're reading is just perfect, and the way it unfolds is really wonderful. I love this book so much, and it was one of my most anticipated this year, and it really lived up to the own hype that I put on it, and I just can't recommend it enough. Seriously, go watch my video because you'll see me gush about it. But I gave this one 5 stars, and it is my favorite book so far this year. The next book I read was The Angel Maker by Alex North. Now, let me try to figure out how to tell you what this book is about. So, we follow a detective who is investigating the murder of a professor. But we also follow a woman named Katie, and when she was a teenager, something terrible happened to her brother. Now she's 30 years old, and that brother has gone missing, and she is trying to figure out what happened and go back into big sister protective mode and just try to find her brother Chris. On the other hand, there is a serial killer that can possibly tell the future, maybe. So as you can see from the synopsis, there is a lot going on in this book. I was really looking forward to it because I have loved The Shadows from Alex North before. That is one of my favorite books, and this book was such a disappointment. Again, I just had a lot of big disappointments this month because I was reading anticipated books and they just didn't live up to it. This book ultimately had way too much going on. It felt so chaotic that I just did not care about any of the storylines because nothing felt like it went together. I will say at the end, everything did come together really well, and I like how that was explained, but throughout the story there was just so much chaos going on and nothing felt cohesive, so I give this one 2 out of 5 stars. And the last book I read in the month of April was Scarlet by Marissa Meyer. This is book 2 in the Lunar Chronicles series. I already talked about this series, but book 2 in particular, we meet Scarlet, who is a retelling of Red Riding Hood. Once again, love these characters, would die for them, 5 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books that I read in the month of April. Let me know what you read in April and what your favorite book was. I would love to know. But if you have made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the red heart emoji because Scarlet was the last book I ended on. But that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below. And I will see you next time. Bye!